Welcome back, everyone, to the Property Journey Podcast, episode 28. Today, Roy, I would like to talk about success stories and unsuccessful stories when it comes to property investment. If people, obviously, who listen to this podcast, watch the clips, we'll probably see on their social media feeds, their news feeds, videos of property investment and success stories. Everything seems to be very successful all the time. They're earning a lot of money, they're generating a lot of money, they're building these massive portfolios that are worth millions. And this is why I wanted to touch on this episode. Success stories are possible, yes, but there's also the element of unsuccessful.
Absolutely. My view is, if that's only my personal opinion on it, if you're hugely successful, there's one thing bragging or telling or showing people about it, but that's all well and good. But then what you normally find out with these people, they're making it look as if it's a lifestyle, so that then effectively they can sell a course out of it. Now, there's different courses. There's loads of different courses. Even on my news feed on social media, these providers pop up all the time. And yes, some are good. I know of a few people who've went to them. They've learned different things and what have you out of it. But there's a simple trend out of it. The courses are sold to you as if to say, do my course and you will be hugely successful. And that's not how it works. We were chatting there about the snooker, actually, just before we started the podcast here. I haven't played snooker in 25 years. If I go on a weekend course with Ronnie O'Sullivan to show me how to play snooker, am I going to be a pro at it the next day? The answer is no. But if I go on a course with Ronnie and I'm practicing and I'm playing snooker every single day, I'm learning about it, I'm researching it, I'm practicing, I'm playing other people day on, you are going to be, it's simple, you are going to get some good results and some great results out of it. So it's the same for property. I know people who spend a big amount of money in those courses. They think they're going to be brilliant the next day, and that's it. But likewise, I do know other people who maybe don't even go on a course, but they're fully committed. This is what they want to do, and they are spending every day researching, searching the internet, speaking to estate agents, viewing properties, speaking to mortgage brokers, getting stuck in, and then they are doing well out of it.
Because that's the big thing is kind of, I suppose, then when it comes to property investment, what you define as success. So I'm sure you probably have a number of examples of successful stories in their own right, but they're probably very different.
Yeah.
Would you have any examples of kind of even say two different examples, but they're miles apart in terms of what people, the person themselves are saying it's successful?
Well, one simple one jumps to mind. I know of a few people who buy houses, they renovate them, and then they sell them and cash in, and they make money, or what looks like money, so they make a profit. So to them, they are successful. Now, to that person, what they're doing, they're delighted about it, they're happy. That's not always for the likes of me. Doesn't suit me, because you have to put in a lot of time. Those guys are maybe doing a lot of the work themselves, so fair enough, fair play to them. They've got the skill set for doing the manual work and doing the joinery and the electrical and what have you. If you didn't have those skill sets and you're putting in all those hours yourself, I don't have the time for it. So when you weigh it up as to what you're actually making, they're just getting a wage out of it. So for the likes of me and for my model, it's not successful. But as I say, to them it's successful. And to other people who maybe don't have the time, or that return isn't big enough for the money that they're investing, they wouldn't count it successful.
Because when you're saying there, that's all well and good if you've got someone there with the skill set to go in and do those renovations. if you've got someone who doesn't have that skill set and they're hiring people in to do that work, you're instantly slimming down the profit margin.
Yeah.
Therefore, when you go to sell the house, your profits are a lot lower.
Yeah.
You know, again, someone could class that as, well, I made a couple of £100 and I didn't really have to do very much.
Yeah.
They'll class that maybe as successful. I suppose the flip of that then is rather than selling for people, it's building a portfolio. It's having 2 or 3, 4 maybe rental properties that are just generating an income for them in a month. For them, that's a success story.
Absolutely. You know, to give you an example, I have a project at the minute there. It was a unit that was completely tired. Could have rented it out, would have got a lower amount of money for it. If it was looking well, I would get a lot more rent for it. I was weighing up the fact, well, it's going to take considerably more to then only get, you know, a bit more of a rental income. But I thought to myself, long-term gain, I don't have the time to be running after this, don't have to be, you know, worrying about it. So simply brought in my contractor and said, right, I've had one meeting with him on site to say, this is what we're doing. I've had a second meeting with him basically halfway through just to maybe just double check, because there's always a few problems, a few things which you don't foresee, but doesn't happen until you start ripping down walls and ceilings and things like that. So it was a second meeting with him, and I've had maybe 5 or 6 phone calls along the line, and that's simply it. And if you're listening, Melvin, hopefully you'll have it all sorted out this weekend, because I've somebody lined up to go into it. So I've been cracking the whip at him. And from my point of view, yes, I could have done that all myself. Could have saved £4,000 or £5,000, maybe more. But for me to do all of that, it would have been taking me away from my main business, and actually would have lost that in turnover in my own business. So I've been and it's no stress, no hassle for me. And I'll be, hopefully at the weekend, I'll be getting that finished off and a tenant moved in. And that's me. In my view, I've made an investment into the property. It's overall increased the value of the property, and nice and simple for me.
You've got a sitting tenant now that's obviously going to be renting, and there's going to be a rental income.
It's a fresh product. I'll have somebody in, no problem at all, and they're going to be delighted. You know, a fresh product. In theory, they have no reason to be moving out within about 2-3 years' time. So I'll get a good return then.
Because and this is the thing, because we've sort of touched there where it really is about what your goals are. And if you achieve your goals in what you are setting out to do in property, it will be successful if you achieve them goals. I think the thing that you see the most is it's so sort of pinpointed on money.
Yeah.
Everything's all about sort of, you know, the money aspect of things. You know, you can earn £10,000, you can earn £20,000, you can earn, you know, you could have a portfolio of millions. It's that pinpoint that it seems to be where people are pulled in to investment. And sometimes that's for all the wrong reasons. Yeah.
There's risks to it, and getting into something that you don't know is always high risk. You know, it's like if I was to go out tomorrow morning and decide, you know what, I'm going to start farming. You know, sure, how hard can it be? You know, you rent a bit of ground and buy a few, you know, cattle and stick them on. Sure, can't be that difficult, Chris. You know what I mean? That's the mindset that we see. Had somebody,
then you forget to feed them.
Then you're in big trouble and you've lost money. You know, I had somebody in yesterday. They want to keep their own house. They're moving to a new house, and I happened to say to them, "Well, are you renting out your old house?" Yes, I'm doing that myself. And I happened to run through, you know, are you registered as a landlord? Have you got your oil boiler receipt or service? Have you got your electrical report for the smoke alarms? Have you got your electrical report for the electrics? You know, have you got buy-to-let landlord insurance? Have you registered with HMRC? That's only a small number of items, EPCs. Aye, it'll be all right. And you're thinking to yourself, no, it's not all right, because without all that paperwork and without inspections and things like that, if that tenant was to like we had an example last year. The tenant fell asleep when the dinner was being cooked, and practically the house was burnt down. And it's a council house worth maybe £120,000. It's going to cost £70,000-80,000 of an insurance claim, of which the insurance company is trying to wriggle out of it. And the main thing that they're looking for is, have you got all of the paperwork? And if you're flippant and you're, obnoxious or don't care about it, you're setting yourself up for a massive, massive fall.
As you say there, like, and especially, we all know it, when it comes to insurance companies, they will try and, they're damnedest to not pay out.
Yeah.
And therefore, if you give them an excuse to not do it,
yeah.
I suppose this was probably something I was going to touch on as well, sort of in this episode, was about how, obviously, when it comes to unsuccessful stories, what a knock-on factor can be is managing the property yourself. Some people are very capable of managing the property themselves. Again, they've maybe got the skill set to be able to go around and do some of the odd jobs that need to be done, or fixing or tidying up around the gardens or cleaning gutters or whatever. Some stuff that maybe they decide that falls in under their skill set of, that's how they want to manage the property. It's when you're doing it and you maybe don't have the experience, is that where you can see some of the real sort of unsuccessful stories where things can go wrong quite easily?
It's probably it's experience and lack of wanting to know. I see it in my young kids. I have a daughter that just, if you're driving down the road, you can just see she's looking at everything and just asking the questions. She wants to learn. It's like doing your homework. My daughter wants to do her homework, whereas my son typically doesn't want to do the homework. So it's the same thing in property. If you want to learn, you will learn. I can think of a handful of investors, they do it all themselves, but they're just that type of personality where they're regimental, they're organized, they're determined, and they're absolutely brilliant at it. Then you get the other type of person who is basically the complete opposite. The blasé, don't care, it'll be all right scenario, I'll get round to it. They're the ones who you normally find falls to the detriment.
They're waiting on the paycheck essentially coming in, at the end of the month, if they're obviously renting. But because as you say there, it's such a risk when we talk about the figures of property. You're taking on debt of, and we're talking bog standard houses now are 110, 120, 130,000 pounds. It's 130,000 pounds. You know what I mean? It's not a small amount of money. Is that then kind of when you bring that risk factor in, you need to know what you're talking about. You need to understand what you need to do. You need to know the rules and regulations of becoming a landlord, or even the rules and regulations of changing a house in terms of doing it up. Because those are all things that you need to be able to do to make sure that your investment is secured and will be successful.
So it's always just, you do your homework, you protect yourself. We're talking here, yes, there's risk, and there's positive risk and negative risk. Generally, if you come in with the right mindset, with the right resources, the right team around you, what I mean by that is the right mortgage broker, solicitor, management company, trades people,
The right course.
doing the right course, you're significantly reducing all that risk. Yes, you're still left with a small amount of risk, but you've brought it from this much right down to this. Whereas by not having any of that, you're constantly keeping it at this higher level.
Yeah, because that's what I'm saying. For when it comes to social media, and I do refer back to it, but it's so prevalent now. The fakeness that you see on social media, my life's great and here's these great opportunities and I'm going on holidays 5-6 times a year, whatever, but they're, 30 grand in debt and the credit card's being, interest is only being paid on it and it's not being paid off. Those are the bits that you don't see.
Yeah.
You don't see that risk factor of, well, I can't pay my mortgage this month because I decided to jet off to Dubai.
Yeah.
those sides of things you never see in social media. It's always the good. It's always the positive. It's always the, this is all great and wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm kind of going, yes, people can be successful. Yes, people can put the hard work in and do these things. But there's also the unsuccessful. Yeah. And that's kind of where, it's not that we want to sit here and put people off. We don't want to basically say, oh, don't do it. It's never going to work for you. As you say, having the right team around you will make it successful, because you're getting the right advice, you're getting the guidance, you're getting the mentorship, and you have the right plan in place, especially at the start. As you say, when you sit with your clients, it's going through a plan before you do anything else. It's having a plan in place to say, well, this is what I want to achieve. Someone that likes yourself, who's an expert and can guide people, will instantly be able to say, well, you're looking at property here that's not going to work. For what your goals are, it's not going to work. And they're instantly getting that guidance straight away before they make the mistake.
Yeah. Well, it's just simply coming into property, as I say, we're not putting anybody off here. It's just simply coming into property in the right mindset. So is it something, to summarise it, are you going to be fully immersed or submerged in it, whereby you're doing everything, this is you, this is what you want to be doing? Again, perfectly fine, do it that way, and you can make a good income out of it, and you can be successful, again, if you put the hours into it. Or do you treat it as simply the matter of, you know what, I've spare money aside there, or I've got a business, or I've got money that's generating surplus money, let's put it into something that in the long term it will always do well, and will always ride out any shocks. It's like Warren Buffett. I don't know if you know Warren Buffett. He stepped down from his investment company, hugely successful 94-year-old who invests in shares. He said, was it maybe 5-10 years ago, although he wasn't an advocate of property, simply said invest loads in property for the long haul game. And that was his advice, I think maybe 10-12 years ago. And on a long haul game, it's you're always going to be, in average, going to balance out. So it's the same as you will see a pro in a downturn. That's a true pro. It's like the cryptocurrency, was it maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago? Everybody was brilliant at it. They were showing off their lifestyles.
2021.
You don't see those people now.
No.
But the pros who went through that rough time, hit the dip, stayed in there, was in there for the long haul, knew what they were doing, or was what's the word? They're basically putting the effort into it. They're staying quiet now, and cryptocurrency and Bitcoin is flying. Well, I haven't checked it in the last 6 or 9 months, but again, it just washed out. That wee dip completely washed out all the wannabes.
Yeah, no, 100%. The kind of one of the last things I want to touch on then, Roy, is in terms of kind of common success stories, where would you see probably the most success in terms of a strategy, or in terms of maybe some of the clients that you're working with? Is it going in, renovating, moving on, or is it kind of having that sort of small portfolio that's generating a nice amount of income and is allowing someone to have 2 or 3 properties under their name?
Generally success, it depends. I can think of a few clients who it was just their mindset. They wanted to buy 1-2 houses a year, and they're doing that, and they're buying the house to refurb, but probably more so as a long-term goal, because they're thinking to themselves, right, well, I'm buying it now, let's strip the house back a wee bit, fix any wee problems if it's an older property, get it all looking nice and fresh, and in theory they should have nothing to do to that house for a good 5-10 years. And they've been they're catching a wave. So the market over the last probably 5 years, it's been quite strange. Unless you're really in it, you don't realise. Yes, overall it has risen, but there has been times whereby it's bobbed along. It's maybe sat for, when I say sitting, it's maybe sitting for like a month, 2, 3, 4 months, whereby it could be sitting on the edge. Is it going to rise? Is it going to fall? What's going to happen? And it's just knowing at all those times, right, well, do I sit back now, or do a push on. But the vast majority of people that I would work with, they're just buying those houses and they're just seeing the overall rise. So, you know, they're buying continually. So they're catching each part of the rise. And likewise, they're safe. Well, not say safe, sorry. They've reduced the risk so that as they continually buy over a staggered period of time, if the market slows or drops a wee bit, they still have plenty of a portfolio which has risen a lot to keep everything balanced. Whereas what some people do is they go hell for leather and they go and buy 10 houses in one go. And that means then they're heavily exposed that if there's a slowdown or a big rise in interest rate rises and their monthly payments have increased, then they're really squeezed.
And in terms then, obviously that would kind of, as you say, touch there on unsuccessful kind of side of things, but would you say that there is common trends when you see people that are unsuccessful in terms of their side of story? You know, is it a case of they've left the property where they haven't done anything to it and they can't seem to get it rented out and they're therefore swamped because they're paying a second mortgage, and you know, that side of things? Is there kind of common threads that you can kind of see when it comes to that unsuccessful side of things?
I'll be brutally honest and say most of unsuccessful, and I don't like to dwell on it, but you know, we are talking about it, it's really down to the personality. You know, I've come across people who they've a bad product and they think to themselves, sure, it's only been rented out, you know, so what if it's in a bad state? That's the wrong mindset. You know, your tenant is your customer. It's no different to running any sort of a business. If you have a restaurant, you know, you don't just throw out the food to the customer saying, actually, it's only a customer. You know, it's the exact same. Or somebody who, I wouldn't necessarily say lack of experience, but they maybe bitten off too much, or maybe just have lacked a bit of knowledge or education. Maybe one example would be had somebody come across, they'd watched a course or saw something online about taking a house and splitting it into 2 apartments. They found a property, didn't do their due diligence in the area. They've got a property, they bought it, but it's in a poor area. There's a lot of antisocial behaviour. So anytime they try to do any work to the house, it's being smashed, it's being broken into, there's stuff being stolen. Trades guys refuse then to go back and finish the job, and it's just a spiral for them. And that's simply down to just maybe, you know, they went to look at the house once, they were nowhere near from that area, but they picked it because they thought they could do that and it was cheap. They thought it was cheap.
Probably, as you say, one of the biggest things for unsuccessful is going for the cheapest.
Yeah.
You know, and you do see these, again, it's sort of relating back these success stories with HMOs and, you know, I'm going to buy a 6 or 7 bedroom house and we'll turn it into 6 or 7 units and, you know, it's all going to be hunky-dory and I'm going to get 6 or 7 rents. But as you say, if you don't understand the area and you don't understand the location that you're buying in and the neighbourhood or the community or whatever, you know, whatever it happens to be, you know, that can very quickly turn.
Yeah.
You know, and even simple things like, you know, understanding, for example, an HMO, you know, that's a separate application. You may or you may not get it. If there's too many objections, you will not get an HMO application. Therefore, you're sitting with a very big house that has 6 bedrooms and a very select few people that would be looking to rent a 6 bedroom house. That's
a very technical, not to go into another conversation, but again, it's all about getting the right team. If you have, you know, even down to the legal side, it's very technical, and if a solicitor isn't dealing with that regularly, it can be very easy to make a mistake without them knowing generally, and that immediately misses out on you getting your license, and it means you've paid a lot of money for a house, as you say, that just becomes a 5 or 6 bedroom house. It's lost the license, so it's devalued the property.
Well, I think we'll leave it there, Roy. That's success and unsuccessful stories. As I say, it was more, I wanted to give, obviously, the listeners kind of that perspective of, you know, not everything's hunky-dory when it comes to property investment. Not everything's hunky-dory when it comes to investment in general. But sort of give both sides the argument, kind of, not everything you see is all sunshine and roses, and if you, as you say, if you do put the work in and you do put the effort in and you get the understanding, there's a higher chance of being successful and a lower chance or reducing the risks then. So episode 28. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in the next episode.